What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Oak Tree Football Channel, and in today's video, I'm going to go over my thoughts on the Eagles winning against the San Francisco 49ers last night on Sunday Night Football. Now, of course, if you did not know, I'm an Eagles fan, so I'm extremely happy with this win. The 49ers were big favorites in this game. Not many people had the Eagles winning, but the Eagles were able to win. It was the first one of the season, of course, which somehow brings them to first in the division. That just shows how bad the NFC East is this year. But I'm very happy with this game. I think the Eagles played a lot better than they have. It was not a good start to this season. I mean, that loss to the football team, up 17, and then losing 27-17, just wasn't great. And then losing to the Rams and then tying with the Bengals just was an ugly start to the season. Especially Carson Wentz really did not look good, but there was just a lot of mistakes early. But I think last night, when I'm recording this last night, I think the Eagles played really, really well against the defending NFC champions. Now, hopefully this can, spark something in our season, and hopefully the Eagles can turn things around and start winning games. Hopefully they don't win, 7 or 8 games a season. Hopefully they win double-digit games, which may seem a bit unlikely, but I think they have a chance. The 49ers are a good team, and even though they had so many injuries, so did the Eagles last night. So I'm really happy with this win, obviously. And I think maybe the Eagles have a chance next week against the Steelers. But without further ado, I'm going to get into just talking about some pros and some cons from this game. Also some things that, okay, nothing special, but nothing terrible either. But let's get into starting with the pros. And the first pro I have is Carson Wentz. Now, I mentioned Carson Wentz earlier. He has not looked great this season at all, but he looked a lot better last night. Now, statistically, it may not have been great. 193 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. I believe he had 37 rushing yards and a touchdown, but he was so much better than he has been. Threw an interception early in the game, but I don't really think that was his fault on that interception. He was hit as he threw, and it was just a great play by the defense as well. So it's still going to be an interception, but I wouldn't blame him too much for that play. But he just looked so much better. I mean, he was a lot better as a scrambler. He was great at scrambling a few years ago, but since the injuries hasn't been great, completely turned that around yesterday. Was throwing the ball so much better than he has this season, and I think that's great, and I really hope he can keep playing like this and play even better because he has not been playing well. And I am a big fan of Wentz, but he has not been playing well up until this game, but he played really, really well against the 49ers, which is great. Second pro is Travis Fulgum. I believe he played in his debut for the Eagles, and he was really, really good. He made 2 receptions for 57 yards and a touchdown. Had that fantastic touchdown. Brilliant pass from Carson Wentz, right where he had to throw it, and Fulgum made a great play to stay in bounds and get into the end zone. And I think the Eagles really needed someone to play like this, someone under the radar, because the Eagles starting at wide receiver now, they had like 3 players playing wide receiver last night. 5th-round pick rookie John Hightower, Travis Fulgham, and undrafted free agent a few years ago, Greg Ward, who was a practice squad player last year. That's really not a good receiving group. They have so many injured players. But I really liked how Fulgham played last night, and, he's probably not going to be a starter on this team, but I think he's a solid backup, and when players get injured, when wide receivers get injured, which they probably will, I think he can be a good replacement, and I think he showed that last night. Next up, I have the defense overall. The defense was just really good last night. The defense, it looks so much better than it has, and it wasn't an incredible defensive performance, but there were so many players who played great. First of all, there was Rodney McLeod. I believe he led the team in tackles, and he got an interception last night, first interception for the Eagles this season. I really like McLeod as a player, and he really showed up in that game against the 49ers. So I'm hoping he can continue that because he's a pretty underrated player. Never been the best player, but I think he can be pretty good. Next, I got Nathan Jerry. I've actually never really liked Jerry as a player that much. I've always thought he was kind of underrated or overrated, even though most people don't really consider him to be great. But I thought he played really, really well yesterday. Had, I believe, 10 tackles. It might have been 9, something like that. But I just think he played a pretty solid game. He made some big plays, and I really liked his performance. Next up, Darius Slay. I think Darius Slay played his best game as an Eagle so far. He got 5 tackles, no interceptions, but I think he played a lot better than he has this season. Made some big plays in that game, and, it's not the Darius Slay we've seen a few years ago from the Lions, but it was definitely a good Darius Slay, and I'm hoping this is going to be the Darius Slay we see this season for the Eagles. Next up, we got Kravon Leblanc. What a game by Kravon Leblanc. I believe he's in his 4th season in the NFL, something like that. Never really been such a big player, but was great last night. He had 2 sacks in his career coming into this game. He got a sack last night, had a forced fumble as well, had a solid amount of tackles. Really, really nice performance from him. And that forced fumble was huge because that set up the eventual Travis Fulgum touchdown, which obviously was a very, very big play. So LeBlanc had a very, very good night, and I'm hoping he can continue to play well because he's never really been the best player, but I feel like I've said this for a few guys, Nathan Jerry and Rodney McLeod, but he looked really, really good in that game against the 49ers. Next up, I got Alex Singleton. I'm going to be honest, I had never heard of Alex Singleton coming into this game, but he played really, really well last night, and now I know him, and I'm really happy that he's on this Eagles team. He was mostly a special teamer coming into this game. He played in the CFL and I believe he won Defensive Player of the Year. He was one of the best defensive players. He had over 100 tackles each season. And then in 2019, he signed with the Eagles, was on the practice squad for a bit, got promoted up until the 53-man roster. But he was mostly a special teamer, didn't get many snaps, but then yesterday he was playing a lot due to more injuries, which I'll talk about later. But he was great. He had 2 tackles, a couple big tackles earlier in the game, and then he had that pick 6. Obviously, it was not the best throw by Nick Mullins. It was right to Singleton, but still, he was able to make that interception and bring it all the way back 30 yards for a score. So I'm excited. I'm happy with what I saw, and because of how many injuries the Eagles have, Alex Singleton is probably going to be seeing a lot more playing time this season, and he was really solid last night, so I'm happy with that. Next up, we got Marcus Epps on the defense. Epps had a really, really good game last night. Never really been the best player, but performed pretty well last night, so I'm really happy with that. Javon Hargrave had, in my opinion, his best game with the Eagles so far. It definitely wasn't the best game, but he got half a sack and I believe 1 or 2 tackles. Definitely wasn't a great game, but I think it was pretty good for him. I believe it was his best with the Philadelphia Eagles. And then the defensive line is my final pro. I think the defensive line played very good again. I think it played very well last week. And I think it played well this week again. I don't think it was as good as last week, but it was definitely still solid. The defensive line got 4 sacks plus Kravon Leblanc's sack, which made 5 sacks for the Eagles last night, which is really good. But there were definitely some very good plays on that defensive line. Josh Sweat had one of those sacks, had a really good play. So there was a lot of pressure from the Eagles last night from the defensive line. I really like that. I'm really happy with that. The Eagles' defensive line is looking good. But Fletcher Cox really didn't make much of an impact, or Brandon Graham. Or Fletcher Cox had some injuries, dealt with some injuries that game, but Brandon Graham didn't make much of an impact either. I hope that gets better, but still, even without those guys performing, it was still a good performance by the defensive line. Some things that were okay was the offensive line conceded 3 sacks. Not bad against the good 49ers defensive line, even though it is injured. So I think the offensive line is pretty good. It's looked good this season. It was not great against the football team at all, but 0 sacks allowed against the Rams, 3 against the Bengals, and 3 against the 49ers, which is good. And then my other okay is Miles Sanders. So far this season for me, Miles Sanders has been the player of the year, not including this game. In the first 2 games, he was great. That is player of the year for the Eagles. He had over 100 scrimmage yards in both of his first 2 games. Last night he was just average, had 46 rushing yards. And he wasn't great as a receiver. He dropped a pass. He dropped a big pass, which the Eagles were eventually able to convert on 4th down, or 3rd or 4th down. But still, it was kind of a rough play for him. Not the best night for him, but it definitely wasn't a bad night at all. And finally, the cons. First one is injuries. There's more injuries. And, the Eagles still have solid backups, players who play well. Talked about it earlier. Alex Singleton, really didn't know him, but he played well. And there are a few other guys like that as well. But it's just, I don't know why, but the Eagles always find a way to get multiple injuries. Next up is Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz was basically non-existent last night. 4 catches for 9 yards, but most of those were earlier in the game. The 49ers just did a really good covering him. So the tight ends really didn't make much of an impact last night, which is surprising because I think the Eagles have a great tight end unit, but Dallas Goedert was out, and Zach Ertz just couldn't make much of an impact, but I'm still happy with the win. And the final thing I have to say is the defending on George Kittle was not great. But before I talk about that, I just want to say George Kittle is an absolutely incredible player. What a performance. 15 receptions, 183 yards, and 1 touchdown. He's always been one of the best tight ends in the NFL for me, but for me, it's always been Kelsey above him. But this performance for me just put him over the edge. That was absolutely incredible from Kittle. He's an incredible player. He only really made one not great play, which was when he dropped the 2-point conversion. It wasn't the best throw, so I don't really blame him for it, but other than that, what a night. I believe he caught every pass that he was targeted on other than that 2-point conversion. Maybe there was one play later in the game, but what a game. I mean, the Eagles just could not defend him. His first game back from injury since week 1. Incredible performance. So just great job, George Kittle. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the Eagles game this week. I'm very, very excited that we were finally able to get a win. Next week against the Steelers, I think we can get another win. It is in Pittsburgh, but I think the Eagles definitely have what it takes to beat Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is coming off a bye week because of positive cases. Not for them, for the Tennessee Titans, who they're going to play. So I'm excited for the Steelers game, and then after that they have the Ravens. Not gonna lie, I don't really think they'll beat the Ravens, but I think they have a chance against the Steelers, and I think this win is really, really big because I think this is kind of a turning point this season. I know it's only week 4, but the Eagles are now first in the division. I know that's not saying much because it is the NFC East, but I'm really happy with this game for the Eagles. I had a lot more pros than normal. Normally only 3 cons today. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like. And if you are new around here, feel free to subscribe for more NFL and college football content. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Go Eagles!